All right, everyone, about 10:15 right now. I'm going to switch gears just for a moment because a lot of people in Savannah are neighbors to the south, where a lot of people from the Carolinas, of course, vacation and coming up on the holiday weekend would be interested in what's happening there. There was a shooting at Oglethorpe Mall in Savannah yesterday. The DA in Chatham County now holding a press conference at this moment. Several people were hurt, 3 of them shot. Let's go ahead and listen in here on Live Impact News on WCNC+.
I am not going to comment on the facts, the identity of those involved, or the specific details of the investigation because I understand that that is not my role and the investigation is not complete. And as your prosecutor, it would be premature for me to rush to judgment. But what I can say is that this was deliberate and coordinated. And because it impacted our community as a whole, I am here to make a clarion call to our community for community response. What I am saying is that somebody knew that those young people had guns before they came to Oglethorpe Mall. Somebody in this community knew that that was going to happen. Somebody in this community knows the people who are involved, even though they haven't been publicly identified yet. And what I'm saying is that our best chance at prevention is collective, collaborative community action. And I'm saying that with all the sensitivity in the world, because as your district attorney and the top prosecutor of this county, what you need to know is that by the time a shooting like this happens in our community, it is far too late. So what I'm saying to the members of our community is that we need to get a grip on our young people before they get a grip on guns. These guns and weapons in our community did not just appear. What I'm saying to our community is that we have to reconcile America's love affair with firearms and weapons. You cannot both claim that you have and embrace a right to carry firearms when our children are shooting each other in the face in Ellis Square and at Oglethorpe Mall and in the streets in the Barrows and in the 30s. We have to reconcile the fact that our community nationwide, and yes, here in Savannah, has a problem with gun violence. And until we decide as a collective community that we will do everything we can to take guns out of the hands of young people, we will continue to see this violence. What most people don't know is that prosecutors have a season that they call the dog days of summer. What we know as police and prosecutors is that the index and occurrence of violence increases drastically in summer months. And we see it more in domestic violence and in public shootings. I will remind you that there were a few years ago, there were public shootings down on River Street during the 4th of July celebration. During the summer, we had shootings on Avery Street and throughout our town. But I want to make a clarion call to our community because this incident at Oglethorpe Mall can't just be the most recent shooting. Unless and until we take action to do something different and shift the mindset, unless and until we take action to do something preventative before our kids get their hands on guns and firearms, unless we collectively put our political differences aside and intervene early, we will continue to see cycles of violence in our community. And that's something, ladies and gentlemen, that's an issue not just for law enforcement, not just for your DA, not just for your electeds. It is an issue for you as well. To the community and everyone under the sound of my voice, you can help us by denouncing gun violence. You can help us by denouncing snitch culture, which prevents us from bringing people to justice. You can help us by alerting us when you are aware that there's a firearm in the hands of somebody who should not have it. We need your help because it does take a village. The time has come and the hour is long spent for us to quibble over small political differences and personality conflicts. The time has come for us to stand together, and not just as law enforcement, but as a collective community, to say no more violence in our community, no more guns in our community. We need to support the efforts of your elected officials, but we also need to act. As your district attorney, I am often asked to attend rallies and protests to end a number of different causes. I have attended in the past and I will continue to do the same. But as your district attorney, I'm telling you, I am tired of making noise and doing nothing. I am calling on every teacher, every coach, every parent, every mentor, every Greek letter organization, every social organization, the Chamber of Commerce, and everyone in every area, because this is an all-hands-on-deck situation. Unless and until we make both that shift in mindset and the investment, there will be no winners in gun violence in Chatham County. And so everybody has to put not only their money, but their knowledge and their service where their mouth is. It is easy, too easy, to comment on community events on Facebook. If you have an issue, you should come with a solution. My door and my office stands ready to accept your partnership, because you can keep your complaints. If you're not acting, you can keep your complaints. This is a clarion call, not just because it must be done, but because it can be done. I'm not going to make you any false promises. Many of you will ask me what I will do, how I will judge the evidence, and what I'm going to do next. I'll tell you that it's premature for a prosecutor to project an outcome in a case, because I have to review cases as they are presented to me. But I can tell you, I can assure you, that we will resolve this case as swiftly as possible, with all of the laws, techniques, and strategies that are available to us, because we know how important this is to you. But rest assured, even though this is how we handle all gun charges in our office, even though with every shooting, every public shooting, no matter where it takes place or who it takes place in between, our office's policy is to add firearms charges, whether it's possession of a firearm by a convicted felon or possession of a firearm by a convicted felon, possession of a firearm during the commission of a crime. Because our lawmakers have said that this is so important to them that they put these laws in place to add an additional 5-year penalty on top of whatever the penalty or punishment will be imposed for the underlying offense. These are the legal tools and strategies that we plan to employ whenever these individuals are captured. But I want to impress upon you that you should make no mistake that we will prosecute this case and the individuals involved to the fullest extent of the law. But I also expect to see community action and change, and I'm willing to lead the charge on that, because these are not law enforcement problems, they are not prosecutor problems, they're not even mayor problems, these are community problems. Now that I've expressed to you what my legal intention is, I'm going to share with you my personal opinion. What we need right now in this moment, not just the people on the steps, Jenny Parker, but what our community needs most is unity, peace, order, prevention, and a collective consciousness that the war on our citizens and innocent bystanders must end. I'm telling you that as your prosecutor, I want as much heat, as much resolve, and as much action put behind this as there was, and as much commitment as there was to the war on drugs in the 80s and in the 90s. We need to announce a war on gun violence, and we need to take all-out measures to do so. As your district attorney and the top prosecutor for this office, I respect everyone's rights to believe what they believe, to have a God they name, to have no God at all. But I would be remiss if I didn't tell you that what I think we need right now is prayer for our law enforcement, prayer for public safety, prayers to cover our youth so that their lives are not cut short by senseless violence. We need calls for collaboration. We need prayers for our government and everyone who is responsible for making any decision in this process. I have asked members of our faith community to offer public prayer on those issues, and some of them have joined me today and are on the steps of this courthouse. Let that be a signal and reminder to you that we not only need the protection of the shield, the power of the prison, we also need hearts of compassion and the help and assistance of every public servant in every capacity across this county. And I will say, just like the voting process, if you don't vote, you can't complain. And right now, if you don't get involved and if you don't act, stay silent. We are not the only first responders, so are you. And I expect everyone in our community, I hope and I pray that everyone in our community will show up, show out, and make a loud statement against gun violence in Chatham County. I'm going to end my comments here and take questions from the media, and after I do that, the call to prayer will be made from this podium.
Mr. Attorney, I know that you can't talk about specifics with this case, but a lot of people, just even with business owners we interviewed, people out in the parking lot said the words gang violence. Is that a problem in our city, in our county? Is that something that y'all are looking into with this case? I know you can't talk prematurely, but can you answer that?
What is your name?
Sarah Smith.
Sarah, the policy of my office is to leave no stone unturned. If there is gang involvement, we will charge it. That will heavily depend on what's presented to us once this investigation is complete. But Sarah, did I get it right? What I want to add to that is that a wise person once told me that we are more interested in labels than we are with symptoms. And whether you call it gang violence or gun violence, in America in general and in this county, we have too many guns in the hands of young folk. You can call that what you want to, but that's how I describe it. And that's how we have to attack it.
I think Attorney Jones, you mentioned that you had several prosecutors on the ground last night assisting. What was their role and what were they looking for while they were at the Oval Court Mall in the aftermath?
I'll let you hear from them because I believe and I trust my staff. And the best thing to do is to refer to those who were the boots on the ground. As their leader, I can tell you that this is not the first crime scene they've gone to. These are the most talented and seasoned prosecutors in our office. And at this point, their goal is to assist law enforcement and to be supportive in the collection of evidence and to answer questions that officers and law enforcement might have for us during their investigation. But I want to call to this podium Mr. Christian Stahl and Ms. Jenny Parker. They don't like to be seen, but the reason you need to see them is because under my direction, they responded to that scene immediately and were there until 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. So I will let them speak to that.
Good morning. To answer your question directly, Ms. Parker and I arrived on scene probably within 30 to 40 minutes after the event took place. When we're called out by when we're called out by the district attorney to go to any major crime, whether it's a homicide, mass shooting, anything that is at a high profile, we are told to go out there to it. Our job is to assist law enforcement, not to interfere with the investigation, because that's not what we do. Our job is to simply help and aid in the investigation as much as we can on legal issues, because we look at it in a different place. We look at it to prepare for grand jury and for a trial, and so we have a different look, and there's certain things that we can assist on the legal side of it.
I know you can't get into specifics, but can you give us an example of what you mean by legal issues?
Can you take that?
Watch that. Sorry.
Just a very simple example of something that may come up is a question about whether a search warrant is needed to search a certain area or person, and that's something that we can give legal advice on, and any other legal issue that comes up. For example, sometimes there are specific laws to deal with juveniles and how juveniles are dealt with, and we can provide advice on that. Anything that happens to come up.
Is that something y'all provided advice on? I know some of the victims involved, one of them was a juvenile, 2 were young adults. Is that something y'all?
I can't comment on this specific case, but those are just 2 examples that come up fairly regularly.
District Attorney Jones, there have been a number of these shootings in recent history, and this is the first time, please correct me if I'm wrong, but this is the first time that you have had a press conference this soon after something like this. Why did you feel it was so important? What was it about this shooting that made you feel so empowered to speak today?
I'm aware that in the summer, our young people go to Oglethorpe Mall. It's a place my kids go all the time. One of the images that sticks with me that's related to this incident is, a lot of some videos have been leaked on the internet that what I viewed did not come from law enforcement. But one of the images that I saw was blood on the ground in a mall, and I know that mall like the back of my hand. But one of the things that was most powerful for me is that there was a young boy. He had to be in single digits, about 8 or 9 years old. I hate to say that I am in no way desensitized to crime and violence, because you know that we deal with these kinds of shootings every day. But how could you not feel compelled to make a public statement when you see images like that? That image kept me up all night last night, as I'm sure it probably did for so many other people, because that's our future. And if we don't do something now, if we don't take action now, then we are going to continue to see young boys and elderly people, like those people at the mall yesterday, under attack. What's different for me is that this is a visible demonstration of what you have heard me say over the past 5 years. Crime is everybody's issue. We've become desensitized to shootings that take place on Burroughs Avenue and in the 30s. We become desensitized to those things, but when we have shootings that involve the most vulnerable segments of our community, the most innocent segments of our community, not only does it compel me to come out and make a press statement, it compels me to do what I'm about to do, which is to call on the pillars in this community, not to talk, but to act. Because without intervention, it's going to get worse. We are entering our 4th of July holiday weekend. And it is my desire, hope, and prayer that all of our citizens and all of our visitors who have decided to make this their destination, that they can do so without being exposed to unnecessary violence. That's why this is different. We have seen a shooting on the 4th of July shooting on River Street before, and we don't need to see it again. That's how this is different. It doesn't make it any more important than any other case we handle. But what it does say is that the index of risk and danger to our community and to our tourists and visitors, particularly on this holiday weekend, means that we need to uptick our awareness, our attention, our call to action, and we need to become more organized and collective than the shooters that we're trying to detain and capture. That's what I'm saying. That's why this is important. It's always important. But to answer your question, that's why we're here today.
It's kind of bounce off of Sarah's question. There's a hesitation at times with elected officials here in Chatham County to say whether or not Savannah-Chatham County has a gang problem. Last night, a high-level law enforcement source confirmed to us that this was a gang shooting. You know, I know you said earlier that it really doesn't matter what it's called, but for a lot of folks, they see it as nobody really wants to say what's actually happening. Is there a gang problem in Savannah-Chatham County?
Let me say this, I don't fault those leaders and I can't blame them. I don't know why or how they describe the incidents that happen in our city. But one of the reasons there is confusion about whether or not there is or is not a gang problem is because we have a lack of data culture that collects evidence and intelligence about what gangs are doing, where they're gathering, what their next move is. We need to bring the criminal justice system into the new age of technology and data so that we can collect information about what truly is or is not happening. I'm not an anecdotal speaker. I'm not going to stand here for political gain or affluence or affiliation and send a dog whistle that there is a gang problem or there's not a gang problem. But what I can tell you as a district attorney is that there are laws on the books to address it. And if the evidence fits those statutes, those charges will be filed.
District Attorney, could you speak in more specificity on what type of political and community action you want to follow with this?
Sure. These incidents don't take place in a vacuum. The people who are involved in this incident, they have friends, they have parents. Oftentimes, their families are members of our local churches. People are more likely to communicate issues to faith leaders and teachers and social workers and all those kinds of people before it ever becomes a case and before law enforcement ever starts investigating. What I'm saying is that we need to have collective and community conversations instead of debates about what is really happening in our communities. This is not a political problem, it's a people problem, and it's going to take people to solve it. I am open to town halls, open table conversations and discourse. I have communicated during every press conference I've ever done that my office stands open to answer questions from citizens. But I can also say